I woke up at 5 and wasn't able to get back to sleep. And in that time, I was just kind of shown this chronology of everything that had been happening in my life that led me to here. All of the spiritual experiences, the moment of meeting God. There's hummingbirds outside my window right now. And I've been thinking I need to share my testimony. And I have shared my testimony in the past, but it either doesn't get seen or heard or falls on deaf ears. It's not circulating. And I've wondered for a long time, God, do you want me to share this? Am I supposed to share this? I've gotten pretty clear pushes and clarity that I am. And I don't know what purpose this is serving. I don't know who this is for. I'm going to leave that up to God to determine who's going to hear this and who it's going to impact. I don't know how long this will be. I also don't know if my kids are going to interrupt me in the middle of it. This is literally the only camera that would work for me right now. Couldn't find my other camera. My phone didn't want to work. So, you're led, you go with what you're given. So, I'm just going to jump in. In case you're wondering where we're going with this, in 2019 I met God, but there was a lot that led up to that. God is real, in case you weren't sure. God is very real. And what was fascinating was I had a lot of spiritual and supernatural experiences before I had biblical context. And then in hindsight, Jesus came for me probably a couple of years ago, April or so, close to my birthday, powerfully, strongly, like, you will get right, you will repent, you will throw away all your crystals and esoteric stuff, and you'll learn the Bible. And I ended up finding so many clarity points and validations through scripture and through other people's experiences and listening to near-death experiences and realizing there were so many similarities. And so that was fascinating. But starting at the beginning, I'm just going to start, and whatever comes out, comes out. And if it finds the right audience, then it does. And if it doesn't, I'm not sure where else to go with this. I think a lot of people feel a sense of urgency. I'm noticing this definitely in the Christian community, this sense of, is rapture coming? I'm feeling it, I'm getting signs, all that kind of stuff. And then listening to different scholars talk about the math and the prophecies and how accurate they've been up until now, and this is the time. And then on the other side of the coin, the New Agers are saying the world's about to split and everything is shifting. And so regardless of what frame somebody's looking at it, the people who are sensitive to these things are definitely noting that it's happening. For me, I've lived on both sides of the coin at different times in my life. I was baptized around age 10 and confirmed, and First Communion and confirmed all at the same time. It was like a deal or something, I don't know. All at the same time in 4th grade when I was about 10. The problem with that is that it was also one of the most traumatic times of my life. I was severely bullied at my Catholic school, and the contradiction was really hard to grasp. So I didn't really feel like I knew Jesus at all. It wasn't at all a thing. But as a kid, I'd always felt really spiritually sensitive. I always was deeply empathic. I could look at somebody and just kind of read them. And around puberty, I discovered I had the ability to heal with my hands, which that one was more welcome, though I didn't know how to use it quite yet. And so I would mostly just soak up other people's pain, especially as an empath. And so I just stopped doing it because it was causing me more pain. And as an empath, and it's something more than that, it's something different, but when you read someone and you tell them their truth to their face, they feel exposed, they don't appreciate it. And I learned as a young child, you don't tell people what you see. And so mostly in my youth, I learned to shut everything down. But my awareness and my sensitivity was always there. And so I was definitely seeking as I was growing up. And it was the 90s, so it was like witchcraft was really popular, and astrology and personality quizzes and all that kind of stuff. So I was always just fascinated by that. When I went to college, I got more interested in psychology, and so just trying to understand things. Um, Beyond that, I ended up pursuing, just kind of trying to understand. I really got into all the things esoteric, like the crystals and the, like I said, astrology. Eventually got into tarot cards, and because I had that sensitivity and that connection, my ability and my like seeing and all that was very, very strong. And so I was just like taking in things. Like I studied Native American medicine, and I studied shamanism, and I studied all these different things. And witchcraft was part of that at some point, you know. And in the New Age, it just kind of all blurs together, which is um, how I think it becomes a slippery slope, and also how it becomes um, risky and dangerous and opportunistic for people who have, you know, bad intentions. So I was in that. I went, finished college, met my husband, went back to school. We got married. Um, Ended up getting a degree and profession in the healing arts, like in the normal sense. Um, and then started that track. Had my first child, which was a deeply traumatic experience, and it kind of cracked the egg open. Um, Cracked me out of that like hyper-achieving mode of like all about the world and how I'm proving myself and that kind of stuff, and pushed me into healing, trauma recovery, that kind of stuff. And then in addition to that, I was already really into these spiritual forms of healing as well. And once I started going through my own journey, there was this rawness to me, and it was like it was similar to puberty, where everything just kind of amplified. My sensing, my connection, everything just got louder and broader, and um, my experiences started getting much more tangible, like visible, sensory, real, very real. It was like in the New Age, the perspective is this veil is torn, and I guess it also is in Christianity, right? Because when Jesus dies, the veil is torn so that the Holy Spirit can come in. And these are all things that I didn't understand then. I didn't have the context. Because when I was exposed to the Bible when I was really young, it was such a traumatic time that I wasn't able to receive it. It was like I was punished for not already knowing the biblical teachings. And then I was punished by my peers for having an interest or a desire to actually learn, because that was lame, right? So it really shut the door for me there for a long time. And I believe now that everything is intentional, that God has this plan and sees it all and shapes us in the way that we're shaped for a purpose. And for me, I realized many years later that I think all of these eras of my life were like training. Just like I went to school and then I went back to school. It was like that. There was experiential pieces, and then there were also the educational pieces. So things started getting really interesting around 2017, and I know that there is on, again, both sides of the coin, whether it be esoteric or biblical. 2017 is a pretty powerful time. A lot of stuff was happening, a lot of stuff was changing and switching, and I would say at that point I started to get really strong dreams and visions. um, I think my first vision, I was in the kitchen. I was a mom at this point, little kids at home. Um, I was in my kitchen. There's a hummingbird again. And as I look up, I see this being like just present to me. He kind of floats down into my vision. And he's life-sized, and he's in a space that if he were physically there, he couldn't exist. Like he was in the wall or the stove or whatever, but like it was as if I was seeing into a different plane, a plane where he was existing, and that I was just able to now see. So it was kind of like a doorway, but everything was still there. This will be important later. Everything was still there, but I was seeing beyond what was there. And he just appeared. And there are so many moments in this era of my life where there's just kind of this like frozen, dumbfounded, like, I do not know what this is, and I do not know how to respond to this. I just kind of freeze and wait, you know. And He says he looks kind of like a warrior. Like the closest thing I can compare it to is kind of like the Lord of the Rings elfin characters. Like they're very like long and regal, and they wear like that armor. It wasn't metal, it was like the plates of like strong leather and stuff like that. Um, Very simply dressed, not ornate or anything like that. Hair was like pulled straight back, and I think that's where like the elfin like vision comes in. But he was not. He didn't look like an elf. He didn't have pointy ears or anything like that. He looked like a person-like thing. Um, but he was very serious, and he telepathically asked me. And I think this might have been the first time that I had like a telepathic exchange, um, like this. And he asked me, what did he ask me? Do you accept? He asked me, do you accept? And, my mind is trying to sort things out. But I will say that when these things happen, inside gets very, very still and very calm and quiet. And it's like there's this pause. Normally my brain would be running a million miles an hour trying to like do the math and figure it out and assess and that sort of thing. And when these experiences would happen, it was just very like still and calm. I'm really hoping you guys can hear me because it's sitting on a book right now. So let's hope you can hear me, because this would be a lot of energy I'd have to try to recreate. Okay, so what did you say? Do you accept? And I didn't know what he was talking about. Like, I had no context. Like, this being just showed up and asked me if I accept what is he asking me to accept? There was no explanation. This is the other thing I've noticed over the years. There's never an explanation. There is always this expectation that you know. And I will say that on some level, you do know. And this later was clarified for me in a different experience. So I did kind of like an internal check, and there were no like, like I told you, I'm empathic. Like I'm always getting reads and registering and stuff, and some internal kind of like meter is telling me what's true, right? And I didn't get any red flags. I didn't get any like, no, run, terror kind of thing, protect your children. I didn't get any of that, right? I just got like quiet, and I said telepathically, I said, yes, I accept. And then he pulls out this big sword, and like, there's this moment where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna die, but like, I don't know what's happening. And so he takes the sword and he knights me. He knights me with this big sword. And then he puts his sword away, and then he's gone. And I have no context. I have no understanding of what just happened. What did I just agree to? And I think in that frame, I didn't know what to do. I probably saged the house out of like fear of just in case it was bad. Like and it was only like all that panic and stuff only came in after like my human had a chance to come back in, because spiritually I was just ready. It was like an appointment. I knew it was going to be there, but consciously I didn't know that in my human. And so that was one of the things. There were several things that happened in that period of time when the kids were really little, between when my daughter was like preschool. She was like 3 to 5, and then my son was like a baby. Hopefully you're still with me. One of the most profound things was my daughter, when she was about 4, so she wasn't in school yet, she was at home, and she was small enough that she was sitting at the kitchen table, but she was like kneeling on the chair because she was little, so that she could reach the table to color. And I was in the kitchen again. I'm always in the kitchen. And she's coloring, and she's just this like joyful little bubbly personality, just like singing to herself and talking and telling stories and verbalizing every thought that comes out of her head, kind of like her mom. And all of a sudden, silence. And I'm not looking at her. I'm looking at that stupid stove again, and she's over here at the table, and I just hear like all of a sudden it's silent and still. The crayon hits the table, and mom instincts, I look over at her to see what's up, and she's just sitting there like frozen. And I'm a nurse practitioner at this point, so my brain is like, is she having an absence seizure? Like, what's going on here? Like, what is up with this? Like, assessing, she's breathing, like, what's happening? And then she very slowly turns to me, and so I'm looking at her, and she slowly like turns to me, and with like a flat affect, which means, if you're not sure what that means, it means like no expression, just flat face, and like a low monotone voice, which is not her voice, she said very calmly, "Do you have any questions for us?" Us. I don't know who us is. And again, there's that moment of just like everything is frozen. And because I had already been having experiences and I wasn't, the idea of channeling and stuff wasn't foreign to me. I just asked, uh, what is the purpose of life? Which I would never ask a 4-year-old what the purpose of life is. But this was clearly not my 4-year-old. And she said, yes, the purpose of life. You know how when you're sleeping, you dream? And I said, yes. And she said, well, that is the purpose of life. Oh, no. She said, you know how when you're sleeping, you dream? And then you wake up. And she said, that is the purpose of life, to wake up from the dream. And then just as soon as that happened, it turned off. And she was herself again. And she's like, she just kind of, oh, my cats are coming in. And she just kind of like woke up from that and then went back to coloring. And I'm just, just like processing. And I said, what were you just saying? And she's just like, back to her little self, humming and singing and stuff. And I was like, what were you telling me about? She's like, what? And I said, you're telling me about dreaming? Like what did you just tell me? She's like, dreaming, and she's just very agreeable. It's like a little personality. And I said, no, you were talking about waking up. And she says, and you wake up. And like, she had no idea what she had just said. And she was just like back to her little like la 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 la, and I repeat whatever I hear kind of thing, and like back to herself again. And I was like, wow, okay, like, and that felt really, really profound. Like she doesn't know what the word purpose means. Like, she's a bright girl, but like that's not her, So that was pretty crazy. There was another visitation that happened. I don't remember what day it was, but it was sometime in that same space, somewhere between 2017 and probably 2018, 19. I was in my bedroom by myself. No one was in the house. My door was closed. And I was using tarot cards. I know. I was using tarot cards, but I was using like archangel tarot cards. So it was sort of like there was this like transition of praying, and I was definitely connecting with angels and that kind of thing. Like that was I think the bridge. And I pulled a card of Archangel Raphael, and there was somebody that had entered my life at that point who I didn't know at the time would end up being pretty dangerous and toxic. But at this moment, everything was still great, and here's the thing, guys. This is, I think, the broader message. It's incredibly lonely to have these awarenesses, these abilities. It's incredibly lonely. Those are my cats. And I feel like I'm getting interrupted because I think this is an important message. For people who have sensitivity, and not just like emotional sensitivity, sensory sensitivity, it translates really strongly to spiritual sensitivity. There's no space for us. There's no room. You either go into the woo-woo, esoteric, new age place because it's the only place where people are like, yeah, of course, we accept you. Because in the Christian space, in the church, like there's this, what is the word now? The cessationism, like the idea that none of this stuff exists anymore. Like all the miracles of the Bible and all of the abilities, including all the things that Jesus told us we were supposed to do, suddenly don't exist. So anytime you talk to somebody in the Bible camp, the response is, oh, that's from the devil. God would never tell you to do that. God wouldn't do that. God wouldn't do that. Like, how do you know what God would do? How do you know? How could you possibly know what God would do? I will tell you that my experience of God has been that he never shows up the same way twice. I've never seen him interact, connect, show up, express the same way twice. I have noticed that the devil does. And so this is the clarity point that I'm talking about, is that everything has come full circle. My understanding, my education has come full circle, but it took time. There was a process, there was experiences that led me to different points. So back to this moment, which was probably 2018, I'm guessing. I was, so it was a weird hybrid of, I was connecting with angels, I was talking to archangels, and I know that like that's not really cool in like the Christian world. I get that, but again, it was like this transition between the esoteric and connecting with God and like the truth of things. And so as I'm doing this, I messaged my friend to say, oh, I pulled this card, because she had a connection with it, or at least expressed, my cats are trying to infiltrate, or at least express that she had a connection to it. So I sent her a text message to say, oh, I just pulled your card, kind of thing. And then again, I'm home alone, nobody's there. She didn't respond. And then my door blows open. And it was closed, it was latched, you know? And again, no one's in the house. The cats, there was no cats, there was nothing happening. And the door opens, and I was like, well, that's weird. And then it was like a register of, there's beings out in the hallway. And I just remembered there was something that happened prior to that I'll explain in a minute. But at this moment, there were beings in the hallway, multiple, and they looked like they were humans again. They were wearing long robes, and it was the same kind of projection like that warrior person showed up as, where it was like they were real and tangible, but they were like a hologram, like they were in another space, but I was seeing into that space. And they were my size, but they looked like they were much bigger beings that had been scaled down to my size. Like they didn't look like, it looked like I was seeing them in a different scale. Like if you're watching a show or something, like, you know, you register that those are like adult-sized humans, but they're smaller, kind of a thing, right? You know that by looking at me in the screen, I'm not actually this size, right? You know that I'm a human. Anyways, there were multiple of them. And it was interesting because it was, again, one of those things where it was like my soul knew that we had an appointment. I consciously, as a human, had no idea this was going to happen, but the greater part of me knew. And so I walked over there, and what was interesting about this one is they were interacting in my space like it affected them, which I don't think it really did. So it was very respectful. It was like, oh, okay, hello, yes, like we knew you were coming, kind of thing. And they come in, and I have them come in, and it's all very respectful. And I closed the door, which I think is funny because no one was home. Like, who was gonna see what was happening? But I closed the door, and then they surrounded me. There were three of them, and they sort of like one here, and then one here. And they got very, very close to me, and they asked me, again, no explanation, no context. They asked me, are you ready? The warrior asked me, do you accept? They asked me, are you ready? So I got both times here that like consent mattered. Like you had to accept consciously in this consciousness, in this reality. And again, like, part of me just knew I was supposed to be here. So I didn't have any alarm bells. I didn't have any fear going off. And so I accepted yes. And then they got very close to me, and then they like illuminated, and I illuminated, and it was like there was this like transfer of light or something. Like they like I don't know, like they fused somehow with me. And it was just very like peaceful and bright. And then it just got very still, over, quiet. And these things are happening in like 30 seconds. Like in time, it's so fast. But I will never forget these things. These are not forgettable experiences. Oh, the cats are coming in. Okay, we're just gonna pretend like they're not. Prior to that, I had been praying a lot to kind of like amplify my gifts, like the hearing, the seeing, all that kind of stuff. And then I kind of panicked, and I was like, no, not the seeing. The seeing kind of, oh, there's a cat. The seeing kind of freaks me out. I don't know if I want to do that. And so, but I had really asked to hear in the spirit more. And it was answered, and it freaked me out. And this happened prior to the visitation, but prior to the seeing. I woke up one morning, and dreams were really powerful for me, but I woke up one morning, and there was, I heard voices in the hallway, like male-ish voices, multiple in the hallway, enough that it was so real that I jumped out of bed and like looked for something to take to like go peek around the corner and see who was in my house, because it was the middle of the night, nobody was awake. And I was so certain that there were people, and it sounded like they were like hushed whispering in the hallway, and there were at least two, probably three, and it was so real. And so I looked, and nobody was there. And at this point, I was talking to God, like I was talking directly to God. Like I don't know if I would have called it prayer, but like I was communicating constantly. And I said, what was, I asked, like, in my mind, what was that? And I heard angels in my mind. I heard angels, and I was like, and then I immediately asked to like shut it off. I was like, that's too much. Like, please don't wake me up. So like that's scary kind of thing. And it got quiet for a little while, but then it started like ramping back up again. Like, sorry, we have appointments. Um, there's a lot of stuff like that. There's a lot of like bits and pieces, like a period of time where I was like processing world pain, like that whole empath thing. Like I would get these surges, and this was after like the PTSD opened up, and I've been doing my work, and it was no longer my stuff. It was like that channel was open where I was like processing and healing through generational stuff, and not just my stuff, but like world stuff, like a lot of stuff having to do with children. And I didn't understand what this was, but I sort of learned through experience and a lot of pain that if I allowed it to process, to really feel it, to really purge it, that it resolved and it healed. And a lot of this stuff, I didn't understand what was happening, but I just was led, and I trusted, and I felt, it was such an experiential process. It was such an experiential process. It's 26 minutes right now. I don't know if this is going to cut off. I'm just going to keep going. Whatever happens, happens. So at this point, I had that angel experience. I assumed they were angels. And then later, I looked at the text message I had sent to my friend at that moment, right before that happened, and it was 4:44. And like numbers are always really, really powerful signs for me. I see them everywhere. I see recently I was listening to somebody talking about the rapture, and he was talking about 7 weeks of 70 weeks of 7, and 770, 770. He just kept saying it over and over again. I was in the car driving, and then this car pulls up in front of me, and like the license plate is 770. And just the timing of things, like the perfect timing of things. Like these are all messages, and that's one of a million things like that. So let's see if I can get back on my chronology here, back to my timeline. Big picture stuff. The big picture stuff is that friend that I was messaging ended up being a really poisonous snake. And it was interesting because at this time when stuff started really ramping up, there were certain people that just sort of showed up in my life. And who sent them, I'm not sure. But there was definitely lessons there. So everything started amplifying. And I'm not sure which part I want to share. Let's just jump to meeting God. How about that? So the summer of 2019, this is kind of like when things peaked. The summer of 2019, when my son was about 2 years old, we determined he needed speech therapy. And it was really hard to find a therapist, and there was basically one available in the entire county. And he shows up at our house one day, and he seems like a nice enough guy, and he works with my son, and I'm like, okay, well, whatever, we're doing the work, that kind of thing. By the third appointment, he came in and he said, I don't tell people this, but I'm a medium, and the second I saw you, I could see that you had a light going from your crown up, just straight up. And that was really profound to me because obviously I had not told my son's speech therapist about any of the experiences I had had, including that I had been channeling light portals through myself. I'd been cultivating this over years. I'd been teaching other people how to do it. I'd been guided to do it over other people in different places and that kind of thing. Eventually, cemeteries was a big one. And then also channeling light into spaces that had a lot of darkness to kind of like transform them. Similar to the concept of washing things in the blood of Christ. And he had no idea. There was no way he could have known that. And so I was a little shocked that he said that. And then he said, and your daughter has the same thing. And he didn't know that my daughter channeled like the purpose of life when she was 3. Like, so that was pretty profound. And so that started a friendship where he was somebody I could actually talk to about the things I've been experiencing. He invited me to come to his wife's like circles and stuff like that. So, the lines are blurry as far as like witchcraft and spirituality and all that kind of stuff. Also, when I was in the years before, when I was in the native medicine, the woman had led me on like a guided meditation to your higher self. And the experience I had, this was probably my first open vision, was everyone came back saying, oh yeah, my higher self told me this about myself, blah, blah, blah. I didn't have that. I had a version of myself that looked like me, but like more illuminated. And she just very quietly sat there, said nothing, held out her hand, and generated this ball of light. And then I looked at the ball of light, and then she took it and just shoved it into my chest. And that was it. That was the whole thing. So the theme of light and carrying that light and using it has been very, very, very profound and strong theme in my experiences in my life. And New Age really adopts that whole concept, love and light and that kind of thing, and it fits right in. But it's really shallow. Like there's not depth there, and it definitely doesn't account for the darkness, and it definitely doesn't account for the demonic. And I'd say in that time, I'll get to the point, but in short order after that, it was like, and now you're going to learn warfare, because I definitely did. So he came and told me that, and I was like, well, that's fascinating. So we became friends. In that time, like I said, I was into astrology, and I got a random reading from someone who had never met me and explained exactly what I had been doing with my hands. Like I had been doing this energy process that I looked into Reiki briefly, and I was like, this feels like garbage. Like, no offense, but like it just didn't feel right at all. So I didn't do it. I just kind of went along with what I was visualizing and what I was seeing when I was being led to do. So it was a lot of like collecting in and then like transferring out through the hands, like basically light, right? But from heaven, that kind of thing. And maybe like grounding out like the negativity into the earth, that kind of deal. So I was doing that a lot with other people. I would like hold my hands out and they put their hands in mine, and I was doing this process where essentially I was praying over them, but I didn't know I didn't have that context at that time, but that's what I was doing. And I had been training this ability, and it was getting stronger, and it was really profound. People were having healings, and they were getting a lot of peace from it, that kind of thing. And again, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just kind of like following what I was guided to do. And he didn't know any of this. The speech therapist medium guy, he didn't know any of that. And obviously the astrologer who on the internet had no idea about any of these things. And he explained perfectly the process by which like I would gather in the energy and I would put it out through my hands. And he knew nothing about me other than my birthday. And so that really was profound for me as far as my understanding of astrology. But since then I'm putting that on the back burner because, it's not really biblical. So, but at the time, it was very informative. And he very flippantly said one day, like on a live or something, again, couldn't see my face, didn't know my name, none of that, right? He said, yeah, you're here for this reason, you're here for that reason, da 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 da, and you're supposed to protect the children. And like that kind of pinged for me, and I was like, oh, that feels like me, And then later, the medium who had invited me to like the circles at his house with his wife and other people, he was channeling. I think he said he was channeling Mother Teresa, which feels really weird in like biblical terms because not Mother Teresa, Mother Mary, which is also confusing to me because like when I was studying more into like demons and exorcisms, and I've studied everything, exorcisms and things like this. They were saying that like the demons are deeply afraid of Mother Mary. So if channeling is demonic, then why would they be Mother Mary? Like just, like math is not mathing. But anyways, in that process, again, this human in front of me, whether he's full of garbage or demons, I don't know. He doesn't know that. He doesn't know that I was told that. And in the midst of it, he says, and I thank you so much. I want to thank you for protecting the children. And that had been a really profound night. Like, I had been given this guidance that I had this guide called White Buffalo, Chief, and I just call him Chief. He was pretty strongly connected to me. And I know, again, Christian framing would be like, that's a demon. I don't know, maybe. I'm not sure. He didn't harm me, though. But that night was very strange. It was kind of like a peaking of those things. I was rushing to get over there. I took a shower, came out of the shower, and I saw on the back of my neck like a lightning bolt was carved in. And maybe it was like my Epsom salts or something. I never had that happen before. I was like, that's really weird. I go to the circle, there's rattles and drums and things like that, and I'm very musical, and like that stuff just feels like the shamanism really registered for me because it feels very natural. And so I picked up a rattle in front of me, and I was using it, and it was a very like beautiful experience. And then right at the end of that, I turned it around and I saw there was like a picture of a white buffalo with a lightning bolt through it. And that just felt like, like the emphasis of things. And then for him to tell me, you're here to protect the children. And then on the way home, as I pull into the my town, because it was several exits away, as I pull into my exit, all the lights go dark, like all the street lights just turn off. And so I'm kind of freaking out because all these things are just like amplifying, right? And I don't know what any of it means. And so I'm just like, whoa. But regardless, the point is it made quite an impression, and I didn't forget it. And this all culminated to, I went on a girls' trip with that friend who was actually not a friend. I mean, there's purpose to everything. I still don't totally understand it. She ended up being very, very poisonous and toxic, and I recognized that and had to like shut doors and stuff like that. And it began the transition of moving towards God specifically and away from all the things that kind of pretended to be God. But one of the most profound things that happened was we were on this trip, and it was one of the second night or something like that. It was a short trip, and we were out in the world, and she disappeared. I didn't know where she was, so I was like, well, this is weird. And so I went to look for her. She wasn't in the bathroom. I looked out in the parking lot. She wasn't there. She was gone. And I was like, what is this? And then while I'm waiting for her, there were two men standing by the door, and they were characters. They didn't go together at all. One was really, really, really tall, lanky, wearing like a white t-shirt and jeans. And the other one was like really short, close to my height, and was wearing like a long velvet robe. I didn't recognize all of this at a distance, but the tall guy was smoking a cigarette. He like gestured for me to come over. And for whatever reason, I did. Like, again, no internal alarms going off saying this isn't a good idea. And I was going back towards where I came from, so I was like, at least I'm in the vicinity, right? So I go over there, oh, hey, hi. We start talking and find out the very tall guy is from Germany. His name's Jonathan. And the shorter guy is named Raffaele. Remember what I told you about Archangel Raphael? Raffaele, and the robes and stuff, and he's from Italy. And so we talk. It's very superficial at first, and then I kind of got them to talk about what they really wanted to do in the world. And Raphael wanted to be like a choreographer or something, artistic director or something for Lady Gaga. It was very specific. Anyways, we're just talking, and then at this point in my life, I was feeling very bold about telling people about like the hand healing and that kind of thing that I did, and I felt like I'd had enough evidence of it in the world that I could say it out loud. And again, I was still saying it away from like my personal life because I had this scientific profession, that kind of thing. So it's been hard to even talk about this stuff because there's this fear of like, oh God, I'm going to out myself as like a something, right? Non-scientific, hard person. So it's been hard to share this kind of stuff for a lot of different reasons. But in this space where I didn't know anybody and I was with this person who was like a spiritual friend, I felt very like safe to just say out loud what I was doing. So I felt very bold in that moment to be like, oh yes, this is what I do. Here's my card, that kind of thing. And Raffaele was interested, like, oh, that's fascinating. But John was like, there was just like this is bullshit vibe, which is interesting. And I don't know if it was cultural because he was from Germany, or if it was just like, but I was reading it as like, oh, he's not receptive. Like, okay, that's fine. So I go, well, here, take my card. And he starts to walk away. And I see him read the card. And there was a quote on the back from a woman I had met who was an author. And she had experienced my healing. And she had said, Jessica's gift illuminates people's souls, which feels like a really ballsy thing to put on a card, but like I did. And I handed it to him, and I think he read it right as he was like in the doorway. And then he whipped around like really urgently and came back and said, I want you to do what you do. I was like, what? Like, the only time I'd been doing this was in spaces where people were really receptive. They already were like open to the idea that it was going to work, that kind of thing. And this guy was coming at me with this like aggressive kind of like BS, like I don't believe you kind of energy, and it was very strange. And so I was very like not sure about this. And he's like, no, show me what you do. And I had said like I call in angels or something like that. And he was like, do it. And I'm like, I've never heard anyone be like, do it, you know? So I was like, and so I, at this point, this whole consenting thing was very clear to me. And so I reset and I said, are you sure that you want me to do this? He said, yes. I said, you're asking me to do this. And he said, yes. I said, okay. So I put my hands out and I said, put your hands on my hands. And he said, aren't we supposed to alternate hands? Which I thought was interesting, because if he understood anything about like energy transmission and circuits and stuff, then yes, if we were trying to connect to each other, then we'd want to alternate to create like a circuit, right? And so that was interesting to me that he said that. I said, well, no, not if I'm grounding you, because in my frame at that time was still very new age. So in my mind, I was grounding him. What I was doing was pulling out whatever density and like pushing that into the ground so that it would leave him, and pulling in light down into him. So essentially, it's like casting out demons and washing in the blood of Christ and that sort of thing, right? Again, I didn't have that context, but I learned in hindsight, oh, that's what I've been doing, even though I didn't have the words to understand it. So anyways, so hands connecting, Raphael is standing there, he's witnessing this, and we're in a public space, which again is really like ballsy to be doing this. Like it's just, I just felt very bold in this time. And so I had my hands out and, eyes closed and okay. And so essentially I'm praying over him, right? Like this, you allow yourself to sink in, and whatever it is that needs to fall away from you is falling away from you. And we're going to open up your crown and allow the light to pour in and cleanse you and that kind of thing. So again, the frame was all very new age, but what I was doing was interceding and casting out demons and washing, in the blood of Jesus Christ and stuff like that, and which is what I do now. But at the time I didn't have that frame at all. And so it was interesting, because what would previously happen, here's my cat, hi, goodbye. What would previously happen when I would do this is the person would consistently, I would feel this like bottoming out of energy, like a thud, like energetically, and then I knew that they had let it go. And I would open my eyes and I would look at them, and inevitably 90% of them would be crying, right? That was my consistent experience. Because like the scientist in me wanted to test this, I even did this with my kids when they were sleeping, or with the animals. Like I would do like the whole like transmission of energy through my, like pulling it in through my hands. I noticed with my kids when they were sleeping, as soon as I would feel that shift, they'd like shake or roll over or do something. Something audibly different would happen in that moment. And the same thing would happen with the cats. The cats would just freeze while I was doing it. And a lot of times it was just this prayer and this like flow of give them what they need kind of thing. Like your will be done. And with the animals, they would just freeze. And then when I'd feel that shift, they'd like shake it off. Like, how animals, when they get spooked, they'll shake something off and then they're back to themselves. It was the same kind of thing. So I had these other, again, I didn't really understand what was going on, but I could see that there was like something real happening, that it wasn't just in my imagination. So when I'm with him, when I'm with Jonathan, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna go through my process and do my thing. And he and I were in connection for a really long time. And we were swaying and stuff. It was really like a powerful connection, but it was not the same as what I had experienced before. And at one point I opened my eyes and I saw that Raphael was like recording this experience. And I mean, for a moment I was like, I didn't give you permission to record me. But then I was like, whatever, do what you're doing. So went back into it. While we're doing this, I felt these big bright lights, like headlights, come from the side, and then it turned out to be that woman's car. Like, where did she go? And she jumps out and she's yelling and screaming and saying things like, I couldn't find you, and da 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 da, and it's like, I like sketch, but I didn't break the connection. And In hindsight, I think that was probably, like, if there were demonic forces involved, she was trying to interrupt what was happening, but I didn't break it, and so I just stayed there. So she eventually got quiet, and just, she was now witnessing on the other side. And so it was very peaceful and calm, but with Jonathan and all of those distractions, I never felt that dropping out. And at some point, it just felt quiet inside of me, and I was like, I don't think there's anything else for me to do here. And so I let go of his hands, and he still stood there with his eyes closed. And I said, you can open your eyes. And so he opened his eyes, but he didn't look at me again. He was really tall. He looked over me, and he just stared. Like, he was like the same like my daughter, like this, the flat affect, just staring. And I was like, normally I would say, how do you feel? But usually at that point, I could already see how somebody felt, so I knew they were feeling relief and peace. And for him, he didn't seem like a feeling person. He felt like a thinking person. And so I think I said something like, what do you think? And he just didn't say anything. And he just kind of had his mouth open. It was like he couldn't think. And so this was strange. None of this was normal. Like, I mean, not that it's normal, but it wasn't what I had previously experienced. So I kind of, like, and they were quiet. They didn't say anything. I kind of just looked at him, and I was like, what do you see? Because he's just staring. What do you see? And he just, there was a moment where he didn't say anything, and his mouth was still open, and then eventually he said, everything. And I was like, this is weird, and they didn't know what to say. And then he focused on me all of a sudden. He was like, I have to tell you something. This is really important. This is really important. He was so urgent about it. And I was like, okay, what, like, again, none of this is normal for what I've experienced so far. I have to tell you something. I have to tell you something. And he's like, it's super important. You have to do this. You have to do this. He keeps holding his arms up, like in a V. Yeah, you have to do this. I'm like, what is he talking about? And then he starts saying, no, I have to show you. And he's like, I don't know if it was Raphael's phone or what, but he didn't know how to use it. And so for a while I thought, did I like pull in some other being that didn't know how to use a cell phone? And, I wasn't sure what was going on. We were confused. And he was like, and he was trying to come up with a word, because again, there was like an English translation issue, because he's German. And he couldn't come up with it. He finally came up with it, like the word rune. He's like, you know what, the runes, and because in his mind, I think he saw a symbol, and his frame was that there were these like runes, and they were shapes, different shapes. So then he's looking online. No, I have to show you. It's so important. You have to know how to do this. I have to show you. And he's looking for it, and he's looking in the runes, and he can't find it. He's like, this is wrong. This is not it. He's like a victory sign, like a victory sign. And then he looks up. There's one actually called victory. He's like, that's not it. That's wrong. That's not it. Okay, like he's really intense, and we're just kind of watching. And he goes, no, this is so important. And he finally gets frustrated with the phone, and then he's like focused on me. He's like, no, you have to do this. And he's holding his hands up, like standing with his hands up to the sky in a V form, like a V formation. And he's super urgent about it. And he's like, you must do this. You must do this. And so I'm thinking at this point, this guy's screwing with me. Like, nothing about this was normal. Like, in my perspective, I felt really guarded, because he was really aggressive when he came at me, which felt like a challenge, like he was trying to like mock me. He went through the process with me, but none of it felt like it had any of the previous times. And now he was behaving like this, and it was out of character for the person I had just been talking to the last 15 minutes. And so I was just like, I was super guarded. Like, I don't trust you. Like, I don't know what's going on here. He kept insisting, you have to do it. And so I sort of did it, but I intentionally did it wrong, because it was kind of like, I'm not going to give you that kind of thing. I felt like he was mocking me. And my throat is feeling really sore all of a sudden. And so I held my hands up to the sky, and he kept like correcting, like a cheer coach, like correcting my hand and correcting the shape of my elbow. And then when it was finally correct, he looked really calm and satisfied and was like, yeah, that's it. And then, but like all three of us were like, whatever, dude, like you're full of it kind of thing. And you can just see that he was like deflated, like, oh no, she doesn't believe me. Like, she doesn't understand. She doesn't understand. And he just kind of like deflated, and everyone got really quiet, like, okay, like what, like, okay, and he very meekly said, and I could tell in hindsight that something was prompting him to say it, and he did not want to say it, but they were like, you have to say it, because I know that feeling. And he said, he was like, can I put my hand on your heart? Like, he knew I was going to say no. And immediately me and the other two were like, what? No. Like you're just trying to get handsy. Like, what? Why would I let you put your hand on my chest? Like, what's wrong with you, kind of thing. We all were like, no. And he was just like, I know, just please, can I put my hand on your heart? And I did the thing again where I like checked in, and everything got really quiet. And I checked in, and there were no red flags. And in my mind, I saw me taking his hand and putting it up on my, like up high up on my chest, like me doing that. And again, like no red flags. This is all happening really, really fast. No red flags. And in my mind, not out loud, in my mind, I start challenging God. Because I was like, I don't want to cry. I'm going to cry. I know I'm going to cry. Anyways, I was challenging God because I was like, if you, after everything, like all the obedience that I've had, and I don't know why I knew that I was talking to God, that I was talking about obedience, after everything that I have done, where I have shown up outside of my comfort zone, where I've risked, like, you know, my social cred, or whatever the word is, like respectability or like professionalism, and all the ways in which I have gone way outside and I've pushed myself, and I've been doing what you've been guiding me to do, and I know it's been good work, and all of the things that I have been doing because I know you want me to do them. If you're allowing him to mock me in this moment when I am showing up for you, and this is going through my head, I'm not saying any of it, and as I'm saying this, like right before I get to the ultimatum of like, then I'm, you know, like right before I say that in my mind, I've taken his hand and I put it on my heart, and I wait, like I'm angry. Like, it's like, if you betray me right now, like I'm talking to God, I'm not talking to this guy, I'm not talking to I'm talking to God. If you betray me right now, like I'm done. And so as I'm putting his hand on my heart, there's this moment where I'm like, there's quiet. And like a millisecond later, I feel this energy coming at a distance, like a freight train. Like, I guess if you could imagine what that's like if you're standing on a track and your eyes were closed and you couldn't hear anything, but you could feel that the push of the air coming through you. And I felt this energy come at me and then through my heart, like a freight train, through my heart, and then like engulfs me. And I am just suspended in this energy, and this energy is there aren't words. It's like, it's power, and it's density, and it's like I don't even know how to say this, like every cell of my being just ceased to exist. Like, it was all suspended. And it was so obvious that like I had zero power in this. There was I couldn't even will my body to move. I don't know if I had a body. Anyways, so I'm immersed in this like, power is the only word I can come up with that makes sense. So I'm in it. So so things are happening. So remember when I told you, like, I'm in my kitchen and I can see into this other reality, and they're happening simultaneously, but they're not in the same place. Well, now I was in multiple places at the same time, because as soon as that happened, my physical body became completely weak, and I just, like, my knees buckled and I fell. And so now at this point, this human, John, is holding me. He has his hand on my heart and he's holding me, and he was very calm. He wasn't freaked out, or like, it's like he knew it was going to happen or something, or he knew what, I don't know if he could see what I was seeing, or if I was now seeing what he had been seeing. I don't know. But he was very, very quietly, gently, like whispering in my ear from over here, going, "You're okay, you're safe, like, it's okay." And then I couldn't hear him anymore, because at first it was like just this like encompassing, and then like I was out of my body, and then I was in a different place. So in this like curled up space, now it's so hard to explain this because it doesn't make sense physically, but it was like there was this big brightness here. And like, remember I had said that the headlights came on, and that was such a specific, distinct, like bright light pointed in my face kind of thing. It was a headlight. This was like the sun. It was just like there was this like tear in reality, and it was just like so bright, like all of reality. It was just so bright. And I kind of look away, like over his shoulder, and I just see this big, like massive light. And then while I'm simultaneously in this physical like experience, I am now also oriented this direction, and I'm in the light. I'm in it. I'm there and I'm here. And like my whole body is still curled over. Like I can't, like I have no strength or ability to like pull myself up. I can't lift my head. I can't lift my body. I am just like curled up and like this, like in like worship and like in whatever. And later I would hear the scripture about every knee will bow, every tongue will profess Jesus Christ is Lord. I viscerally know what that is, because you cannot be in the presence of God and be willful. You cannot be in the presence of God and have any, you don't exist. I don't know how else to say it. Like I didn't exist. The person, the woman with the kids and the experiences and the dreams and stuff, she's over here existing in the world, in this timeline, in this reality. But me, the me that's me, the me that God made, that God knows, that God and I already planned what was going to happen before I got here. Like, we are now in this space, and there is no physical, I don't know if there even was any physical anything to anyways, but like I couldn't lift up my head, and it was so bright. It was so bright that like I wouldn't have been able to see it anyways, you know? It was so bright. And I, you know, like once or twice, like between like the human version looking over here, it was like I could see like a tear, like a hole, like a window, like someone just ripped it off. Like before it was holograms, this time it was just like I was now staring into God. I was staring into the sun. And there were like, it was so confusing because I could hear the human over here. I don't know if the people around me were talking, but then over here, again, that telepathic communication, there were multiple voices. There were like some over, I don't know, you can't see my spatial, whatever, my screen's not big enough. So now I'm in this space, and there's this presence that is very, very big and very, 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 like, I understand that energy and that space and that light is all this being. I understand that. Like, there's no doubt. There's no thoughts in my head. There's no head. Like, I just know. And there's this presence. And then I hear some other, like, presences, like, off in the space, like, sort of next to and behind. Like, there's physical space there, too. But I'm not, you know, I don't know if any of this makes sense. And so I hear other voices, and they're not the voices of the people in the human world. Like, these are other voices, and they're kind of discussing amongst each other. And so I'm confused, and but just completely, I think the word is like prostrate, but just like face down, like worship, because I mean, I don't think I had a body in that space, but like my soul just knows. There's no like, hey, are you God? Like, there's nothing like that. It's just like immediate and unyielding. And there was just this sense of like, I only exist because you allow me to. Like, it was just so obvious. It was so certain. And this is the thing that's weird, is like when you connect into these other realms or dimensions or whatever word it is that makes sense, the part of you that knows that is there already knows. The part of you that's the soul, I guess, already knows, already knew those appointments were coming, already knows this is God. Like, there's no consideration for even anything other than that. And what was weird is that the way that I felt emotionally, mentally, what I was thinking in my like experience physically, the way I felt in the presence of God was completely different. And again, it was like just picking up from where we'd left off. Like, my soul already knew everything that was being communicated to me, even though my human consciousness was very confused. And there were other voices, and I was confused, and I was both here with the blinding light, and I was also here, and in my energy, I was just like this. I was like a baby. I was just crying. I was just saying, I can't do this. This is too hard. This is too hard. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go home, you know? And, like, it's hard to tell a story. So, contextually, my human has no idea what I'm talking about. Like, deeply, yeah. Like, the prayers of a little girl who's just never felt like she belonged here. Like, I get that, but it was so honest and so real and raw, and just like, I didn't remember who I was as a human. I didn't remember my kids. Like, in my earthly life, I would have died for my kids over and over again. And in this moment, like, I was just this quiet little meek crying baby saying, Daddy, I don't want to go back. Don't make me go back. I didn't even remember I had kids. I didn't remember my life at all. I only knew who I was in the presence of my father. And I was basically just like, I just felt like a tiny little baby. And he was so big. I couldn't see him, but I felt him and I knew him. And the intensity of it, I just felt like I was just like, I would have just become vapor. Like, I could have just ceased to exist at any moment if he willed it. And I would have been okay with it because I was only living for his will. And it's like, I don't want to be here. This is too hard. And I think that this is too hard was like being a human in this reality, being separate from him. All this time I was seeking him, seeking feeling known, feeling seen, feeling like there was a purpose to my life, to any of this. And in that moment, it was just like, it felt like, I don't want to go back. And there was no like, oh, my child, I love you very much, you're special, nothing like that. It was very certain and very clear and very strong, neutral, just truth. Like, this is just the truth. Like, there was no emotion in it. And I heard this voice that was completely different from everything else I was hearing. And it was God. It was just like way up here. And it was very certain and clear. And it was just like very much like, I have spoken and now I'm done speaking kind of a thing. And what he said to me was, the other voices, like the choir, there was like a voice that sounded sort of like a choir. It was like softer, like more feminine. There's another voice which I feel like might have been Jesus because it was masculine, but it was kind. But again, they were like lower than this presence. And I guess in hindsight, it was at the right side of God. So I guess that makes sense. And this is the kind of stuff that I'm saying, like, I had no context for then. So, I mean, I don't even feel the need to like validate, like, this was not imagined, this was not a hallucination, this was not like whatever. Like, if you think that, if you're here at 63 minutes and 40 seconds and you're here to tell me you think it's bullshit or a demon, then just, what are you doing with your day? Move on. Like, yeah. So God says to me, it is very important that you are here at this time. And every word had like weight to it. It is important that you are here at this time. And then he said, you will help protect the children. Now, to be fair, anything that God told me probably would have just been like independently profound. But the fact that it was the third time that I had been given that message in the same, like within months, was, I mean, You want to know what your purpose in life is? Clearly, that's my purpose. Now, I still don't exactly understand what that means, but I will say that my life has reflected that effort. Moving forward, I still, especially because of this urgency now that's being felt, like, am I doing enough? Like, am I protecting your children? Like, what do you want me to do? What should I do? You know, is it about being? Is it about being a vessel to just hold the Holy Spirit? I mean, in the years since then, my knowledge of the Bible and God and everything. Okay, so I'm falling off here. I went home. I didn't know how to talk about this. Okay, I don't. It's an hour. I don't even know how to wrap this up or to move on. There's still more to tell. I guess I'll just keep going and see what happens. He said, it's important that you're here at this time. You'll help protect the children. And then I'm still in that, like, I'm a baby crying to my dad moment. And I said, please just take me with you. Like, this is too hard. Please just take me with you. Take me home. Take me with you. Take me with you. And as I started shifting to that kind of grasping, holding on energy, this is another lesson. Anytime I've tried to hold on to something given to me by heaven, it's like it turns to vapor. It's not meant to be held on to. We can't make it concrete in that way. It doesn't exist in that way. As soon as my energy shifted to the please don't leave me, it just gently receded. Like that, the whole of the energy, God, the light, everything just like gently like that, like it closed up and was gone. And as that happened, I was like returned to my body. And I don't know how much time went on. Was it 10 seconds? Was it 10 minutes? I have no idea. As I come back into this consciousness, and there's experiences later that like reiterate to me this process of moving from that high consciousness space, shared consciousness, telepathic communication consciousness, to back into like this human consciousness, where it's like waking up from a dream. So much of the depth and the density and the understanding and things just kind of like fade because you can't hold it in this consciousness, this human version. It doesn't have the capacity. It's like trying to put all of this stuff, like terabytes of information, onto like a tiny little drive. Like, it doesn't work. I know now our technology is crazy, but I grew up where it was like a gig was like this big, kind of thing. So anyways, it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. And if you try to fit, it just hurts. Like, it's like, oh, I have a headache. I tried to take in heaven into my brain. I don't have the capacity to do it. So, it was like I was just waking up back into my consciousness, and all of that curled over baby crying like energy and stuff just was gone. And I was now back into my normal, like, where I am consciousness with this person, except there's a little bit of like confusion and embarrassment because like I don't even know what just happened here. And John like was like, are you okay? And like stood me back up. He's like, you're okay. He's like, you're okay. And I was like, I'm okay. And then this woman chimes in and says like, so blah, 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 blah. I mean, like, she clearly was there to be a distraction, to interrupt, to delay or distract from this process. Like, I realized that in hindsight. So it just kind of like derailed the moment of it, and he kind of answered her questions and then was like, okay, and then he left, and then I was just kind of dumbfounded, and then eventually we left, and I just did not know how to talk about this. I didn't even know I had no idea how to explain what happened, and I didn't know what it was. For a while, I thought maybe like Archangel Michael had come and embodied him to tell me something, but I didn't know what it was, and shortly after that experience, that I recognized everything got really, really toxic with that woman, and I like shut the door there, and things just really fell apart in my life. Like, I didn't know who I was or what I was doing. And you would think like God tells you your purpose in life is something like da, 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 I got my mission, now I know what to do. No. It was like, I don't know which way is up, I don't know who I am, I don't know why I'm here. Like, I really fell apart. And someone who had been like really important in my life up until that point just kind of exited, and a different person came in and sort of took their place. And it was somebody who was very much in the spiritual seeking space, but in like the new age space. And so he was doing like astral projecting and stuff like that. We were sharing ideas and dreams and things, and everything just really, really, really ramped up really fast. I had a whole series of dreams, which I call heaven dreams, where and I did not understand the chronology of things until this last week. I was going through notes and random things because I didn't sit down and journal all this stuff. I didn't know what it would be. I wish I had, so I would have this like clear timeline. But I had to go back and find notes and different things and bits and piece it together. And so this morning when I woke up at 5 and it just started like streaming through me, I was like, okay, because it had been very clear to me that God was like, you're going to do this. It was supposed to be Thursday. And then my job was like, come in on Thursday. I was like, okay, it won't be Thursday. You need to do it on this day. Okay, well, it won't be that day. And so it was like, you have to do it today. And none of my cameras would work and whatever. So like, this is how we're doing it. And I hope it loads. I don't even know if it will. But your will be done, God. So I had this series of dreams. And this is a big part of how I understand like the consciousness thing further, is I had at least 5 of them, but I think there were more because it was shown to me that I was there for doing these lessons, but progressively it was shown to, the only thing, and it was very, very clear that I was only allowed to see specific things. I was only allowed to retain and keep certain information when I came back into this consciousness, because it's like trying to crush the universe back into like a diamond, like, you know, like the things that I understood when I was in that space. And like I talked about the telepathy, like this is all before I understood other people talking about NDEs and other people in like biblical context, the telepathic communication, speaking without speaking. I experienced it before I had context for it. And so in that space, again, I was like a small child. I was very, very little compared to the beings that were teaching us, which all seemed really, really big and high up, but I never saw them. And it was very clear that I wasn't allowed to see them. It was like there was this fog around us. The space I was in, people describe like the light of heaven, how it's just like there's no sun, it's just like light everywhere all the time, and there's this kind of like softness to it, and there's like white marble all over the place and stuff, like. And we were in a school and we were outdoors, and there were these marble like blocks, and each of those marble blocks had like a different model of some kind, and all of the models were representing a concept, and each of them were variations. And I understood that each of those variations were examples of like different ways that humans express or are shown or experience life or whatever. And I've used those lessons in my healing practice with people, like even traditionally, a lot, because it's useful. So the first 2 experiences were, I was in that like classroom setting, and I remember my first like experience of experiencing telepathy, because it was like anywhere that I directed my focus, I would get a stream of like conversation or information, and I had to like focus on the thing I was supposed to focus on, because otherwise it was like picking up radio waves in all directions. So I had to focus on the thing, and I think that's part of why everything else was kind of like blurred out, like just focus on this, because it was almost impossible to focus because everything was coming in at the same time. And so they focused us back, and I remember looking across the block, and there were people just like me, I guess, human-like beings, and we were all very similar to the way the angels showed up, and everything is just kind of like uniquely different, but all sort of uniform. Like all the people were similar, but I also couldn't see all the people. I just knew they were there. And I looked across, and at one point I saw a person who was also looked just as like kind of awestruck and confused as me. And there was a moment where I wasn't sure if that was me that I was looking at, or if I was me. Because like the me-ness just doesn't really matter or exist, because everything is just all connected. But so I saw this person and was distracted, and I could feel all the beings and stuff around me, and I could hear them, but I was like refocused back onto the lesson. And so the first lesson was this like stack of like 4-sided like Lincoln logs, and it was supposed to represent like personality structure, and one of them was perfectly straight, but all of the rest of them had some kind of variation or issue. And some of them were missing a piece down at the bottom, and it shifted the whole tower, so that no matter how perfectly straight it was made on top of that issue, like it would continue to be off. Some of them were really poorly constructed, lots of pieces were missing or like skewed or whatever. And it was a visual representation of personality, and it was profound. And all of the information that I was receiving and absorbing and understanding, like fully understanding at this like level that I can't even comprehend as a human, was getting poured into me. And then when I'd come out of that and I'd wake up, I could barely remember like the tiniest little bit, but I could remember the visual. And I understood what it meant, but in a human consciousness level. I couldn't possibly understand as a human everything I knew when I was there. The second one was about emotion. We were in the same space, and there were these clouds of like purple fog that stayed like isolated over the thing, and they moved in all these different directions. And I learned that emotions are completely unpredictable for even the person experiencing them, and that men and women experience emotions differently, and there's no flaw or fault in that. It's just they're designed differently. And that's the only thing I could remember coming back from that dream. And then the consecutive dreams after that, I was returning to the same place, but I wasn't able to remember any of the lessons. I started to only remember leaving the building. Like, thank you, bye, like walking out the door. Like, good to see you, like multiple times, where the only conscious memory I had waking up was the memory of leaving the lesson. So I wasn't intended to consciously remember those lessons in this physical human, although I think they're there for whatever purpose they're there for. I do remember one occasion that was pretty profound. And I'll get messages as I'm waking up, like, and it just kind of echoes resounding. Like, one of them was act resilient to be resilient, or the opposite. To be resilient, act resilient. I think it was act to be. And that one specifically, I remember I was exiting the building, and I remember hearing voices like up from up high saying, no, not that door, as I'm going out the door. And I stumble into like this open, like, it's just like that light and the marble just like extending flat out for miles. And there were some steps, and I stepped down, and I looked up, and I saw this like fleet of flying beings that were all like wrapped up and just like they were resting or something, but like I don't know how many, millions, thousands, I don't know, 10,000, just, and they were all like wrapped up in their wings, and they were just like suspended in the air, just still, but like in perfect formation. And it was like, there's that moment of, oh, I'm not supposed to be here, and also, am I safe? Like, am I going to cease to exist because I made a huge mistake, right? Like, and I look up, and the one right in front of me, and so it's all white. They're all white, and the body is all wrapped in like the wings. So I only see the wings as the body, but he looks up for me, and he has these human eyes, but he's like a bird. Like, he has like this beak, but he's all white. And I was like, it was like an eagle or something. I only recently realized that a dove is representation of the Holy Spirit. And so I'm not sure if that's what that was, but very powerful, very serious. And just like looked at me, and I was, I'm thinking like, I'm dead. I'm in heaven, like I'm already dead, right? But like, I just like, oh God, I'm sorry kind of thing. And he just kind of looked at me, and like his beak was so sharp. And he looked, and we just stared at each other for a minute, and I was just like waiting. And then he looked down at the ground, like gesturing to me. And I saw a very big white feather on the ground. And I just knew I was supposed to take it. And so I went to touch it. These hummingbirds are everywhere. I went to touch it, and right before I started touching it, it started glowing fuchsia, and I was gone. I was like, I woke up. Those dreams were going on, and then it was like I was now going to learn about warfare, because things started getting dark very quickly. I had simulation visions and dreams where I was like inside a scenario, and then it was like someone called cut, and all of these like people came in from the sides, like from the wings, and I suddenly could see that it was a set, and it was like a performance or like a whatever. And so there was a series of time where I was seeing that, like the illusion behind life, I guess. that there were all of these other players involved. And I was getting bits and pieces of like demonic warfare type stuff happening. And for people who are like, well, that could have been this or that could have been that. I promise you, if you experience both, there is zero doubt in your mind which one is which. It's very obvious. The beauty of it is, I will say that demons are vapor, like really, comparatively to the power and strength and enormity and everythingness of God. Like, demons are nothing. They are nothing. And I don't fear them now, but I cast them out and I protect against them and I put the armor of God on and I pray over everything. Like I have learned warfare, and I think that's a big part of it. I think that, and like in hindsight, I think that's the knighting. I think that's the light. I think that's all of these pieces that make sense in hindsight that did not make sense when they were happening, and they happened for years. I'm not sure what else I should say. It's almost been an hour and a half. I haven't been interrupted. The cat's helping me out. I don't know how much more there is to share right now, but there is a deep sense of urgency on my heart that I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know who this is going to reach. I'm going to let God decide that. I don't know what the point is. I do feel that our time is short. However you want to interpret that, our time is short. And I'm trying to help protect the children and save as many souls as possible. I don't live in a world where people are like, yeah, let's talk about Jesus. Like, that's not a world I live in. People are like, oh my God, she's talking about Jesus. Like, even my own spouse, like, it doesn't. And so I pray and I intercede and I do the warfare and the protections, and I do all of the things, and I do it kind of quietly. And I'm not seeking attention for this. I've pretty much been hiding from it for a long time now. But time is short, and I don't think there's any value in hiding, because I don't think evil is hiding. I think it's very, very evident, and I think people in all understandings feel that and sense it and know it, and I don't think we have a lot of time. And because of that, I don't want to waste any time hiding. I think maybe that's it. Maybe that's what I'm here to do, is like call in the troops, call in the saints, illuminate people's souls. I don't know. Your will be done, God. I pray in the name of Jesus Christ that this finds who it is intended to find, and that they be protected and they be washed in the blood of Jesus Christ, and that the Holy Spirit fill them so much that there is no room for open doors, that there is no room for attachments. I pray circles of protection. I pray the armor of God over every soul. And Lord, I ask you that anyone that you know is going to come to you eventually, that they be given the opportunity, the dreams, the visions, the videos, the inspirations, the signs, the nudges, before they have to suffer to learn. I pray this, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you. Thank you for listening. I figure out how to stop this thing. Actually, I don't know. Now you get to sit with me while I figure out how to stop this so I don't lose it. Okay, now, so that, let's hope I can. Okay, love you guys.